Okay, I'll call to order this meeting of the Urbana City Council Committee of the Whole, rescheduled meeting on Tuesday, May 27th. Could we please have a roll call to order?
Councilmember Wu,
Here.
Councilmember Evans,
Here.
Councilmember Hersey,
Here.
Councilmember Colasetti,
Here.
Councilmember Bishop,
Here.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Here.
Councilmember Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Thank you. Next item of business is approval of minutes from 5/12/2025 City Council meeting. A discussion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Shreese, seconded by James. I believe we did have just a logistical correction that the clerk's taking care of as well.
Yes. Yep. There was a vote that we will correct. Thank you.
Any discussion, changes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, those minutes pass. Additions to the agenda, are there any additions? Seeing none, next is presentations, public input. If anyone in the audience would like to address the committee of the whole, please approach the microphone. We've got quite a few emails to read. If the clerk could help keep us on our time limit here. I think Councilmember Colasetti will help. Maybe we can go back and forth on some. So these were some that were received largely from the May 19th meeting, which was rescheduled for today. So all of those will be read today as well. Dear City Council members, I wish to highlight that more than 200 people, a large number, recently signed a petition for protecting historic Urbana from the proposed 2025 comprehensive plan. We want the new comprehensive plan to maintain the current R1, R3 zoning and the protections that they afford all residents of the city of Urbana. Importantly, these protections include meaningful public input and a vote by City Council on individual requests for exceptions to the zoning. We do not want accessory development units, duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes, and small apartments by right where they are not currently allowed without an exception that is publicly considered and voted on by council. Staff may consider these types of developments innocuous anywhere, but we don't. And we are the people who live here in Urbana's historic neighborhoods, and we know them best. We want our local democratic processes maintained and strengthened, not diminished. For more than 40 years, West Urbana residents have spoken clearly and consistently that we want the characteristic of our historic neighborhood preserved. In response to rapid and unregulated development of large student apartments in West Urbana during the 1980s, West Urbana residents fought for and won protections by the city's adoption of the 1990 Downtown to Campus Plan, which is a neighborhood preservation plan. The Downtown to Campus Plan was incorporated into the comprehensive plan at that time, and its tenets were subsequently incorporated into Urbana's current comprehensive plan from 2005. We want these protections and the preservation forward philosophy of the 1990 Downtown to Campus Plan to also be incorporated into the next comprehensive plan. The proposed comprehensive plan is deeply flawed because, one, it is unnecessarily and disadvantageously vague. Two, it is not grounded in objective data. If we compare the 2005 comprehensive plan with the proposed plan that would replace it, the quality of the former is much greater than the latter. For example, the 2005 plan has highly detailed maps for each neighborhood that directly correspond to the subsequent zoning maps, whereas the proposed replacement plan has only one undetailed map for the entire city with vague, broad categories and no specific maps for each neighborhood. Consider the Lincoln-Busey corridor. When staff were asked what was proposed there, they first stated that just the properties facing Lincoln would allow for large mixed-use apartments. But when pressed further, they said that the new map drew a broad line that included many interior houses, something the neighborhood strongly opposes, because there were exceptions made for some past developments that pushed into the low-density residential interior. Such a strategy is a game of dominoes because every exception that takes out another further interior house would then logically allow for a whole additional column of interior houses to be knocked down for apartments. In contrast, if we look at the 2005 map, Each parcel was marked, indicating both the past exceptions and the intent to maintain the remaining low-density residential interior of the block, which is what the neighborhood wants. Moreover, a vague plan would allow developers to claim that almost any scale of development is supported by the plan, but most anywhere in the city. That's not good planning. The fact that staff proposed that the current plan be adopted before a housing study is conducted demonstrates that the proposed plan is not based on objective data, but rather it is based on a personal philosophy that Urbana needs more of all types of housing everywhere. The latter is not an effective way to plan or to run a city. In Esther Pat's recent letter to council, she modeled for all of us what critical thinking and evidence-based decision-making looks like for making important decisions that affect our city. We should expect no less for the new comprehensive plan. Respectfully, Eric Sachs.
Right. Next one, it says, please read my comments aloud. Hello, my name is Derek Briles, and I'm a resident of Urbana Ward 4. I'm writing in support of the ordinance that would establish approval procedures and transparency for the purchase of surveillance technology by the Urbana Police Department. Despite frequent claims by Chief Boone and recommendations from Barry Dunn, the UPD seems no more transparent or committed to community input they did before any of this began. I've had the pleasure of hearing and reading UPB budget requests and found them entirely absent of any of the data that Chief Boone claims he uses in decision-making. This lack of openness is troubling. UPD does not seem to be a good steward of the resources they already have. Very little data is made public, which makes it difficult to be informed on the success and failures of UPD. Given the apparent secrecy under which they operate, I do not trust UPB with the purchase of surveillance technologies such as ALPRs without their review and approval. In addition to an Urbana resident, I am also a proud member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. While Boone was making emotional pleas for additional officers with no clear plan for what they would do, my comrades and I went into East Urbana neighborhoods that are so often maligned for being hubs of violent crime, and we spoke with residents there. The majority of people we spoke with did not feel additional policing was the solution. Rather, most people felt safe, and they called for basic things like street lights, not more cops on the streets. People actually seem very distrustful of the police. In fact, the police are specifically what makes some residents feel unsafe. You can read more here, and there's a link. While this is a small sample size of residents, it appears to be more than UPD or the city government has done to meet people where they are and hear their concerns. This proposed ordinance is a big step in the right direction towards transparency and collaboration. I urge all alderpersons to consider this very carefully and make the decision that builds bridges into the community, not walls patrolled by cops who don't even live in this community.
Next one from Steve Fay. Dear Mayor Williams and City Council members, thank you for your service to the Urbana community. Councilmember Evans recently shared his reasoning for voting no on the appointment of Police Chief Boone, which was helpful in understanding his perspective. I am writing to respectfully ask Councilmember Wilkin to likewise share her reasons for voting no, as many community members have expressed interest in understanding the rationale behind her decision. To help keep the public informed, I would also like to invite all council members to consider offering a brief comment when voting present or against an appointment. I appreciate those of you who have spoken with the media to share your thoughts and explain your votes. Thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing your responses. Once again, thank you, Steve Fay, Urbana resident, Ward 7.
Next, to be read into the record, we are discouraged about the zoning changes in the West Urbana neighborhoods that are proposed in the Imagine Urbana Comprehensive Plan. It appears that the Plan Commission and the Urbana City staff planners wish to increase the density within the historic West Urbana neighborhood for the primary benefit of predatory developers. We've lived in Urbana since the mid-1970s as renters and homeowners. We bought a distressed property on West Iowa Street in 1978, and over the decades improved our residence into a comfortable and energy-efficient home. When we began our careers, we chose our neighborhood for its proximity to the University of Illinois and because it has R2 residential zoning. When purchasing a home, there is at least an implicit contract that through the zoning ordinance, the city will protect the investment of owner-occupied residents. The proposed zoning changes, which allow for more multifamily homes and higher density housing in West Urbana, would undermine the character of Urbana's historic neighborhoods. Please reflect that we, the people, through our work and investment in our city, have made our neighborhood unique. The West Urbana neighborhood was awarded by the American Planning Association as one of 10 great neighborhoods in America. The citation is, in part, reads the following. Located between two dynamic areas, the University of Illinois and downtown Urbana, West Urbana has maintained its unique neighborhood identity for more than a century, refusing to succumb to the pressures of high-density development or issues surrounding absentee landlords. Many historic properties remain today the result of an active citizenry and sustained planning efforts. The American Planning Association has selected West Urbana as one of 10 great neighborhoods in America for 2007 in recognition of the neighborhood's sustainable design, commuters who walk, bike, or ride transit at higher than average rates, inviting neighborhood spaces, and community focus on enhancing quality of life. Making a great neighborhood isn't magic, but as West Urbana shows, it takes a community where residents are involved with their neighborhood and plan for its future, end quote. Throughout these many years, our city staff and planners seem to have a determined effort to diminish the quality of our neighborhood that was so well described by the American Planning Association. Over the years and after attending countless meetings, our view is that the principal focus of our city planners is to encourage predatory developers and absentee landlords. Perhaps our current planning staff and the Plan Commission should carefully consider the citation by the American Planning Association. Planners do not make a neighborhood great, the residents and homeowners do. Their Imagine Urbana comprehensive plan, including rezoning our historic neighborhoods like West Urbana, ignores the culture and resources of Urbana. Do no harm. This plan is bad for the city. Michael Plewa, Elizabeth Wagner, Plewa.
Thank you. Next for public input, meeting May 19th, 2025. Please read into the record to the members of the City Council. We ask you to delay action on the Imagine Urbana Comprehensive Plan revision until the Council has received and reviewed more useful maps as requested by Liz Cardman and until there has been a housing inventory as detailed by Esther Patt and anticipated in the plan. We endorse the comments submitted by Eric Sachs. Imagine Urbana contains some useful points, especially in the ideas section, and it is also too vague, especially the maps, to address the current conditions and pressures that we face and to protect the quality of life in our city. In a university community facing significant uncertainty, whatever changes are made should be based on solid information that is relevant to present conditions. Without the housing study, we do not have the information to make appropriate tailored plans. Without detailed maps, citizens cannot give informed input. One of us, Gonzalez, was on the Plan Commission during the last comprehensive plan update, and we note that process involved very detailed maps, block by block and parcel by parcel. The current plan maps are so overgeneral with such generic descriptions that they are open to multiple, often conflicting interpretations. Before you act, this must be remedied. Please remember that over 200 residents have petitioned you about postponing action on the Imagine Urbana draft plan and containing specific suggestions for changes and improvements that should be made before approval. Please heed our requests. Thank you for your service and for accepting public input. C.K. Gonzalez and Michael Walker.
Dear Mayor Williams and council members Wu, Evans, Hersey, Colasetti, Bishop, Wilkin, and Quisenberry, please read the below aloud at public comment if time permits. Thank you all. I will be out of town this evening, so greatly appreciate the opportunity to submit public comment by email. My name is Lila Leopold, and I'm a resident of Ward 4 in Urbana. I'm writing in continued support of the Police Surveillance Technology Oversight Ordinance, Ordinance number 2024-12-042. I thank all members of council for your continued discussion and serious consideration of this ordinance and hope it remains up for discussion at subsequent meetings. I hope council members and our local police leaders can see this ordinance as an urgently needed safety component for working with tools that we neither design nor fully control, and that rather as a supposed hindrance to police work, it can be seen as an integral component of keeping our community safe. That is not a criticism of police work, but a necessary component of working with technology infrastructures today. This ordinance can also play a critical role in maintaining open and honest communication in our community. We cannot say with certainty where data from tools used locally will go or how this may inadvertently and irreparably harm the safety of any member of our community despite its intended use. Therefore, it seems especially necessary that police and the community as a whole remain in conversation about the latest tools and their use so we can all remain best informed about how to keep each other safe and how to continue operating as a sanctuary city that protects the full constitutional rights of its constituents. Thank you very much for continuing your discussion of this ordinance, which seems a necessary and forward-thinking component of 21st century governance. Also, in reference to ordinance number 2025-04-013, I've sent some feedback to the team at Imagine Urbana, but for public comment today, I wanted to emphasize how great it would be if all of the forward-thinking plans that are being made about housing, that we could consider increasing the number of single-owner and locally owned properties, and would be curious for your thoughts on this. It would also be great to hear more about plans for sustainability in terms of the environment and public health, especially as concerning pesticide drift and particulate matter in our air. How might we be able to get a green belt around our city? Green belts are around our fields to both help farmers not lose their soil to erosion, among other benefits, in addition to those for public health. We're going to be up against a lot as our physical environment continues to change, and a focus on tree belts could be one way to offer an equitable boost to community health in every ward. I also noticed the high school graduation rates, and I'm wondering if the following could be one way to help boost these that worked really well in my childhood public school system in New Jersey. Are there any options here for students who need to support their families financially or otherwise to attend high school part-time and work part-time, or to attend high school part-time and trade school or other training part-time? Initiatives like these were able to get my childhood high school graduation rate up to 97%. I would be happy to gather more details about these if there's interest. Thanks for reading and for all you do for our community. Sincerely, Lyle Leopold.
Last one I have here to read for tonight is Dear City Council of Urbana and Mayor Williams. We are in support of Mayor Williams' stance in supporting economic development on Philo Road and directing resources to that Urbana community in need of a boost. A handout to greedy developers is not the way to affordable housing in Urbana. Urbana has open and vacant lots that need development. We need a policy that promotes more availability of owner-occupied starter homes in Urbana, not more rentals. As Mayor Williams said, we are experts of our neighborhoods. Living across the street from TCBC has given us years of experience and challenges to neighborhood preservation. Living next to the Church of Urbana for many years, which tried to convert 811 West Michigan Avenue to a fellowship house without a special use permit, including wanting to create a parking lot in the backyard with an added parking entrance off of Lincoln Avenue. We are no strangers to the benefit of City of Urbana requiring special use permits to propose zoning changes/uses. Special use permits may take up city staff's time, but it is a necessary requirement for zoning changes. It slows the process down, involves neighborhoods, taxpayers, and stakeholders to have a voice in the outcome, as we should. My husband and I were two of the 213 signers of the petition to the City Council urging changes to the language of Imagine Urbana in order to preserve our historic neighborhood and give neighbors and City Council appropriate input to zoning definitions and applications. We don't imagine Urbana the way city staff imagine Urbana. The changes envisioned by the proposed comprehensive plan would be detrimental to the reality of the neighborhood. The elimination of R1 through R3 zoning and its replacement with neighborhood designations would fundamentally allow West Urbana to turn into an R4 medium-density multifamily zone. Developers would by right be allowed to demolish homes and replace them with 3-story apartment buildings. Residents' public input and oversight by City Council is essential. We oppose designating the Lincoln-Busey corridor to allow accessory development units, duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes, and small apartments by right. We encourage use of Urbana's central business district as the most appropriate area for high-density mixed-use business and residential development. We urge you to maintain R1, R2, and R3 zoning between Lincoln, Vine, Maine, and Florida to protect Urbana's oldest and more architecturally significant neighborhood. We want to keep the neighborhood preservation plan that was first adopted in 1990 downtown to campus plan. We urge you to adhere to existing design review guidelines for the Lincoln-Busey Corridor Overlay District and the Green Street MOR zoning district. Thank you, Sarah McEvoy and Hussein Shetoglu, Michigan Avenue. Were there any others that were asked to be read? Or last call, anyone live in the audience wish to address the committee of the whole? Okay, then that concludes public input. Next is staff report, non-scheduled. Is there any updates, staff report? Seeing none. Next is new business. First item is resolution number 2025-05-034R, a resolution approving the capital improvement plan fiscal years 2026 through 2030 from Public Works.
Good evening, Council. We're just here to revisit the CIP we brought to you a little over a month ago now. I think John's provided some updates to questions you had and some updates to the plan that have transpired since the last draft version. We'll go through a couple of those things highlighted and then open it up for any other discussion that may be lingering with all of you. If you want additional explanations or questions, this would be a good time to get those out there, and we'll be happy to discuss that.
Thanks, Tim. And I'll go ahead and pull up our website in case the website or the map are helpful to talk to while we're meeting. But like Tim mentioned, we have more than a month passed since we brought the draft capital improvement plan to you. We did include a few pages of revisions. Just to summarize for you, I was going to highlight a few of them, but happy to take any questions that anybody had. For one, I was going to bring up, we added in a new program, a small annual program, miscellaneous electrical repairs, and it's added into the the local motor fuel tax fund as a replacement for an existing program that was previously funded by Public Works operating budget, primarily for engaging a contractor to respond to vehicle collision damage, if we have traffic signal cabinets or street lights, knock down other emergency electrical needs. So relatively small annual program, but definitely impactful for our operations and helpful in that regard. Another highlight, for the Country Club Road, this is Saline Branch to Broadway, is actually the Country Club Road Bridge west of Broadway Avenue, where the road makes a sharp curve. I was actually just given some really good news by the county earlier. County Highway Department did receive a grant for replacement of that bridge, so we'll be partnering with them. We'll have a relatively small part, but really happy to see that bridge get replaced, and sounds like the county has some good plans to make it a safer road for everybody too. So, then in the facilities section, in the central TIF demolition, we did remove mention of the demolition of the county sheriff office and jail. That was following feedback we got from the county executive. We are keeping that allocation in FY27, about a $3 million allocation for general site remediation, demolition, or site improvements to incentivize private redevelopment within Central TIF. We're just not naming the specific property at this time. So, it's an allocation a couple years out, so we're not tied to it, but it's an illustration for what we'd like to try to use the TIF money for. The last thing I'll highlight here is just for, we've talked about in the past how cleaning and televising of our sewers and lining of our sewers is a big effort we're wanting to make. Really, the cleaning and televising in the next 5 years was a thing we talked about with our stormwater utility fee as well. We did have to delay what we had planned for FY25 because of the large citywide sewer data collection effort that we've been going through. And what that's been creating a situation where our maps are not in a state where we can share those out with a contractor very efficiently. So we're going to hold off doing the contract work until we get our maps in good working order. But we are looking forward to that, getting to a state within a few months that we'll be able to do a larger program in FY26 to compensate. So had that. I guess and just to emphasize too, we didn't get feedback from the public on the capital improvement plan. Had some good questions from council when we met last, but nothing additional in terms of feedback. Just curious if there are any questions for us while we're here.
Any questions? Anyone in the room? Remote, do we still have Mary Alice and Chandra? Did you have any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. And I do recognize that we have a new administration and we have the budget coming up. But it seemed to me as I was looking through this that we're essentially committing over $5 million of our general fund to capital improvement projects before going over the proposed budget. Is that correct? That's my take on it.
Yeah, and just to kind of illustrate what you're driving at there, Mary Alice, that what we did there is a year or 2 years ago, we had kind of programmed in about $1.5 million per year of general fund transfers to the CR&I to bolster the CR&I fund for additional capital needs. And all that $5 million is front loading that instead of splitting that over 4 more years. We front loaded that into this year because of the facilities improvement projects that are slated to go to construction this year.
So there's two items of expected revenue. One is just for fiscal year 2026, and then one is for fiscal year 26 to 30. So what I'm hearing you say is that every year we've been committing 1-point-something million to the CIP, and now you're front-loading that. But if you're front-loading that, we have the general fund for the 5 years to be $10 million, and we have the 1 year to be $5 million. Does that make sense?
So I'm trying to follow you a little bit here, but effectively, so you said $10 million for the 26 through 30. I'm trying to read this text. Sorry.
Yes.
Could we ask UPTV2 to put the screen on for the public and our remote council members? So I know there's a delay, but there's some numbers up there on the screen as well. And I think, Elizabeth, did you want to jump in if that's okay with y'all?
I think I can help. So the 10 million over 5 years includes the 5 million in the first year. So in the financial policies that have been approved by council, there's an annual transfer that's recurring. That's $1 million, give or take, and that increases every year based on the construction cost index. So this year, it's the normal amount that we would transfer. That's a recurring transfer plus the 4.5 million for facilities projects.
So we are essentially contributing for over $4 million in addition to what we typically do every fiscal year. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and that was in last year's program. That was just instead of the 1 million, that approximate 1 million that you used to see or typical of seeing. Last year's program showed that as $2.5 million over 5 years. Effectively, and rather than spreading that out over the 5 years, we front load that into this year because of the anticipated facilities construction cost.
Well, and I'm going to add to that. If you look at the fund statement for the general fund in the annual budget document for FY25, it clearly notes at the bottom of the page that we've reserved an additional $4.5 million for additional capital improvement transfers. So it's just taking the money that's already been reserved and transferring it in next year's budget.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from our remote council members? Or in person here?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I had one, if you could help clarify TIF 4 timeline, and I think I've asked y'all this multiple times, and I think I'm remembering, scratching my brain, is that because TIF 4 ends December 2025, right, and so starting July 1 will be in our fiscal year 26, is that why there's stuff from TIF 4 carried over into FY 26?
That's correct, yeah. And what we need to do is we need to obligate money or have, projects under contract before the end of December, and then we have 1 year to complete the work and pay it out. So that's kind of the really getting down to the nitty gritty on the timeline.
Okay, cool, thank you. Yeah, and just for what it's worth, appreciate spending down whatever we can before that expires soon. So I appreciate that you can allocate stuff and the information that we still have a little time to spend it. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions or a motion?
I can make a motion.
Yeah, go ahead, Jaya.
I'll move resolution number 2025-05-034R, a resolution approving the capital improvement plan for approval on the regular agenda, just in case there are any additional questions.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Second. Oh,
Okay, the delay, gotcha. I'll give that one to James. Any other discussion on this item? Yes, go ahead, Jaya.
Just as we move into budget season, I think it's important that we do keep in mind, we always bring up how under-investing, for lack of a better way of putting it, we are in our infrastructure. And so I caution anyone who thinks the city has extra money because we are not even adequately investing in the infrastructure that we have. So just want to kind of make that note of like, there are amazing things in this plan, but that's what we think we can do, and we're still, what was it, 20 million a year under investing in our infrastructure. So I just think it's important that we think about that, and as we're looking forward, start figuring out what are we going to do, right? Because things are going to get worse. So, thanks.
Thank you. Any other last call on discussion? Okay, we have a motion by Jaya, seconded by James, to move this on to City Council regular agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. And that passes. Thank you. And the next items are 2 through 6, pretty related. Do you think we could omnibus and you could present them all together? Would anyone like to move to omnibus items 2 through 6?
I'll move to omnibus items 2 through 6. Resolution number 2025-05029R, resolution for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code, state motor fuel tax for Florida Avenue, Wright Street to Hillcrest Street. Resolution number 2025-05030R, a resolution for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code, state motor fuel tax for Florida Avenue shared use path. Resolution number 2025-05031R, a resolution for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code, state motor fuel tax for Baker's Lane shared use path. Resolution number 2025-05032R, a resolution for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code, state motor fuel tax for Colorado Avenue resurfacing. And resolution number 2025-05033R, a resolution for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code, state motor fuel tax for Vine Street and Illinois Street improvement, that they be omnibused.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Sheree, seconded by James to omnibus all of those items, and we vote. Oh, Chris, sorry. Sorry. I'm usually not messing up the names. I'm on it tonight. And we take a vote on the omnibus. Is that right?
Correct, yeah. One vote to combine them into one item, and then one vote to forward them to council.
Any discussion on just omnibusing them? Okay, then all in favor of omnibusing, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, those are omnibused. And did y'all have a presentation to show us here?
A presentation might be a strong word, but thank you, and thank you for thank you for bringing these together. So as we've done in years past, with the CIP, there's a group of projects in the fiscal year 25 budget using state motor fuel tax funds, and as an administrative step that comes along with the city budgeting for these projects for the use of state MFT funds. IDOT requires a step where we pass a resolution for each project to appropriate the funds that we'll use. And so the way we've been approaching it is to appropriate what we need for the next fiscal year now. And we've included the project budget that's in, was I saying fiscal year 25? I was saying the wrong thing. Fiscal year 26, sorry. The project budget through fiscal year 26, it's in the CIP. Add on to that a 10% contingency so that we don't have to pass another resolution to IDOT if we go, $10 over. And then just do an accounting with if there's been any previous resolutions, and that is where the last column comes up, where we have referred to as a supplemental state MFT resolution for these 5 projects. And you hit the highlights on them here. We've got really for the Florida Avenue right to Hillcrest, big street project, and the Colorado Avenue resurfacing project. Some relatively, in the scheme of their budgets, relatively minor adjustments for some changing in the budgets compared to what we had previously. The Vine Street and Illinois Street improvements, what we had previously appropriated was just for design. This is appropriating money for the first phase of construction as well. And then for the shared use path projects, this is where we had money appropriated for what was in the grant, the ITEP grant award. But as we found that we really didn't have a robust cost estimate of the project in that early phase when we did the grant application. As design went along, we found that there were costs we hadn't accounted for in that grant application. And so that's now it's coming to a head where, okay, we're moving to construction, so now we have to appropriate the funds needed. But these are all based on budgets that we have in the capital improvement plan that we just discussed. So,
just one item of clarity with the state motor fuel tax resolutions that I like to point out is if we don't spend, anything we don't spend doesn't go away. It remains in our coffers with the state. This is an administrative way for them to track and account for this money. So if we don't spend the entirety of these funds, it allows those will go back into our pool for additional funding, just like any other project. But we try to kind of make sure that our resolution is robust enough so that we're not having to pass a bunch of resolutions when we go from plan to concept to schematic to full construction, known cost type stuff. So,
Thank you. Any questions, Chris?
Quick question about the Florida Avenue right to Hillcrest project. I note that you mentioned in the memorandum that in FY 27, maybe, if the federal government would be so kind, there'll be a $9 million big grant, big project to be done in FY 27. Is that right?
correct.
Okay. That'll.
Yeah. So that's a great example, Chris. So we're not trying to project too far ahead with our appropriations. We're really taking it 1 year at a time here with these. Yep.
Any other questions? Questions from our remote council members?
Nope, I don't have any questions.
Okay, with no further
Me
questions.
neither.
Thank you. With no further questions, would accept a motion for our omnibus items without having to read them all, just motion the omnibus ones, right?
I move that the omnibus items be moved to forward to City Council for approval on a regular agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Sharice, seconded by Chris to move those omnibus items to the regular agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, and those omnibus items pass. Thank you. Next is ordinance number 2025-05-016, an ordinance amending Schedule J of Section 23-183 of the Urbana Local Traffic Code, prohibiting parking at all times on certain streets, Harding Drive at Steer Place, 1202 East Harding Drive by Public Works.
Okay, thank you. So this one's really best told by opening a map up and dropping the little golden dude down onto the street. So we're recommending a segment of no parking on Harding Drive in front of Steer Place. This actually originated from Chief DeMondade, as he was, there's some construction that's been going on at Steer Place, and they kind of brought his attention to how they would respond to a call to Steer Place. And this got him thinking about their access, their ability to get their equipment there. And as you get onto Harding Drive, you look at Steer Place. Here we have a 6-story building here, and the trick is that the fire apparatus has a challenge climbing this steep, navigating the steep drive and getting into this space, especially with the overhead, bridgeway there. And if they're on the street, if they need to raise their ladders up, say to, no, the tree's in the way is kind of a bad example, but to reach an upper story, they're going to extend their booms out. Not the booms. What's the name for the? Oh man, the outriggers. Thank you. Sorry. They're going to extend their outriggers off the side of the truck, reach out, look like a little spider or something going out, and this is where there's just really not space for that if we have cars parking on both sides of the street. And so that originally Chief Dade had asked if we could do a temporary no parking while the construction was going on. As we got to talking more about it, I realized it's really a permanent situation. So just in this, along the front of this entrance here, we're recommending a no parking on the north side of the street. It's been in effect since February as a temporary regulation, and if council is willing to adopt it as an ordinance, we can make it permanent.
Thank you. Any questions? Questions for remote members?
I guess I have one.
Go ahead, Therese.
What are the, how has the community dealt with the no parking for the temporary time? How's that been accepted or whatever? Yeah.
We've received no feedback one way or the other.
Okay.
About the signs since they were installed. That's a good question. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Or would it accept a motion?
Okay, I'll move for ordinance number 2025-05-016, an ordinance amending Schedule J of Section 23-183 of Urbana Local Traffic Code, prohibiting parking at all times on certain streets, Harding Drive at Steer Place, 1202 East Harding Drive, be passed forward to City Council for approval on a, well, we don't have a consent agenda, so I guess it'd just be regular agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I can second, but we also could put it on the
Okay.
consent agenda if you want to, because there are more
Make it a
things.
consent agenda, I guess, huh? Okay, we'll make it a consent agenda, Jaya.
Then I'll second.
Second, okay. Thank you. Moved by Sharice, seconded by Jaya to move this to the consent agenda. Any discussion? I would just add, as far as complaints. I also haven't heard anything, have spent some time at Steer Place since this has been there and have not seen an issue during different parts of the day. There was still enough street parking at various times of the day. So I think that this makes sense and doesn't seem to be a disruption to the local neighborhoods. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. And that passes. Thank you. Our next item is resolution number 2025-05-028R, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement for participation in the Illinois Public Works Mutual Aid Network. It's like, we got Tim again. Thank you.
Yep. This is really an update. We entered into this in 2008. IPW Man is what it is, the short term of it is, but it's essentially a mutual aid agreement between us and other municipalities that partake in this for mutual aid. Commonly, it's used in emergency situations, major storm events, things like that. But what they've done is they've worked to kind of really alleviate some of the ambiguity that was never well defined in the original agreement. Of how do people request, aid, what are people's obligations with that type of stuff. The real takeaway is it's voluntary. People can request it. You may or may not be able to support it or may or may not opt to support it. I would tell you typically it does talk about like people could request aid during non-emergency events as well. If someone had a critical piece of equipment go down and they couldn't get rentals in and we had something that wasn't going to alleviate service, we could opt to help people with that. With this agreement, typically anything less than 5 days, nobody's trying to, you're not supposed to be recouping the cost of that, but if you go over 5 days, you can recoup that. If the state happens to request mutual aid from a municipality or something, the state will reimburse for those type of things, IEMA, stuff like that. But really the takeaway from all this is they're just trying to get something that's more solid so that people, typically what happens is whenever there's a question of do we need aid, everybody's trying to figure out how to request that aid. Who do you go to? How do you ask for that? How do you say yes? How do you say no? And they've basically tried to solidify some of that with a plan of operations that goes with this agreement. But they've updated the agreement, so they've asked everybody that's participating in IPW Man to basically re-up and sign a new agreement with some of these updated language and alleviation of some of the ambiguity.
Thank you. Any questions? I have one. Have we contributed or used this network in recollection in the past? I think we've asked this before. But
not since I've been here. I don't know that we've done it before then either. I think there may have been some requests that came in 15 years ago at this point. I don't have data on that to say definitively, but there's nothing that stands out. Even when we've had some of the worst storm events, I don't know that we've requested aid in some of those scenarios. A lot of it typically, it's not that we couldn't, it's just that we haven't. And I don't know that people have requested us to some of the tornadoes and stuff that have went through the different parts of the state in the past few years, but we haven't received any robust requests for aid since I've been here, so almost 5 years.
And it's a $250 annual membership fee?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Trace?
Just while we got you at the table there, for our people at home, for our contestants at home, if you could just give an example of what kind of aid, and I think you've done this before when you came first time, but people might want to have just more information of what it means to be involved in this and what we might be asked to do, our public works might be asked to do, and what aid will not just be rendered, but what aid could be rendered to us even.
Sure. Yeah, and probably the most prime example would be extreme weather events, right? Where if we get a derecho or a tornado that comes through and we have roads blocked and power lines down and sewers blocked and anything and everything. We have all hands on deck and we're not keeping up. We would request aid in that type of situation. And typically the benefit of this is when storms like that move through, it hits a line. So if it hits central Illinois, northern and southern Illinois, communities that are unaffected can render services to those that need that, where, you know, if we need to just get the power lines cleaned up, get the public health and safety things mitigated that we're not able to do in a timely fashion, we would call in for stuff like that. There are non-emergency situations that I could see this coming into play. You know, we looked at this a little bit when we were having some issues with our recycling hauler and things like that, where if we had community-wide refuse that we had no alternative for, or we couldn't get rental trucks to pick it up and do it ourselves for a week type stuff. You know, we looked at some of that with Bloomington, who has, they operate their own solid waste and recycling pickup internally, where we were kind of preparing if there was going to be an issue and we couldn't get rental trucks, you know, on call and pick it up with our staff. You know, could they provide that mutual aid type stuff for a, you know, a 1 week duration type thing?
Thank you. Where are we? Questions? Any other questions? Or motion? Yes, James?
I'll make a motion to move to City Council for approval on the consent agenda, resolution number 2025-05-028R, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement for participation in the Illinois Public Works Mutual Aid Network, IPWMAN.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by James, seconded by Sharice. I'm sorry, did you say regular or consent there?
Consent.
To consent agenda. Any discussion? I would say I appreciate mutual aid networks in general and appreciate you bringing this back and hope that we don't have to use it, but hope that communities can when it is needed and we have some things to be able to offer. Any last call discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. And that passes. Thank you. Next is resolution number 2025-05-035R, a resolution authorizing an interfund loan from the General Operating Fund to the Central Tax Increment Financing District Fund from Human Resources and Finance.
So as you know, last month, the Hotel Royer opened, which is amazing. But we have an obligation related to that, which is to pay them $5.2 million. It is $5.2 million because it was reduced by $250,000 increments based on the most recent version of the development agreement. And so to make that happen, I'm recommending that we do an interfund loan to the Central TIF Fund to pay the development agreement. And then at some point, probably right after the first of the year, we would issue debt to repay that loan. And I'm confident that we're able to do that we will have enough cash in the general fund that will not be needed that quickly. So I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm not going to drone on due to the lateness.
Thank you. Questions?
Grace, I had a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So Elizabeth, did you say that it was reduced by how much?
$300,000 to $150,000 reductions. So one after December 31st and one after March 31st. Once they crossed over to April 1st, there was a second reduction.
Has there been any discussion in lowering the second amount? Since they did open they had the certificate of occupancy a week after that deadline?
No, there's been no discussion, and the agreement was clear that the reduction took place for any fraction of the quarter. So.
And can we have a clarifying question here? It says that last time we extended the completion date to December 31st, 2024.
Right, so starting January 1st, 2025 is entering the first 3-month period, is that correct?
Right, that January 1st was the start of the first 3-month period. So January 1st, there was a $150,000 reduction. Then April 1st was the start of the second 3-month period. And the agreement is clear that it was a $150,000 reduction for each 3-month period or fraction thereof.
So why doesn't that fraction thereof, why are we taking 300,000 instead of what seems like should be 200,000 if it were in 1 month into the second?
No, for
Quarter.
any fraction of a 3-month period, even 1 day results in a $150,000 reduction.
Oh, so we're saying the fraction of time, not that we would prorate the fraction of reduction.
Correct,
okay.
the agreement is clear.
Thank you. Sorry, Mary, I was jumping in. Did you have other question there?
No, Grace, I was along the same lines as you in terms of the fraction.
I agree. Yeah, that was
So-
not clear to me. Other questions? I had another one. Am I not understanding how TIF works? I thought that we have a decent amount of money in the central TIF fund. I'm not really understanding why we're taking out a loan and bonding money for that.
So Central TIF is a relatively new TIF, so there is not certainly this amount of money available in the Central TIF. In a newer TIF, the increment hasn't grown enough to produce the kind of revenue that we expect to see later in the life of the TIF. So the repayment of the debt, we had planned to make that repayment from revenues from the project itself. But so the revenue will start to, the project will start to generate property tax increment. It'll generate food and beverage tax, hotel motel tax, which will then repay the debt. That was the plan.
And even with the, didn't we transfer TIF 2 remaining balance into central TIF? And there's still not enough for this?
I don't recall, but no, there's not enough available at this point in time. And certainly there's some money available in the TIF, but that would hamper our ability to look at other development projects in the downtown. So the plan was all along to issue debt for the entire amount of the incentive and repay it with revenues from the project.
If I may ask if we could just have a refresher maybe for the next meeting on the central TIF balance and kind of the terms with that, because I was not entirely clear. I was under the impression that this is kind of the purpose of a TIF. Other questions, Chris?
Elizabeth, remind us that Hotel Royer has 10 years to repay the loan or the incentive development?
Well, the city has 10 years to repay the debt for the incentive. And according to our math, we believe that the hotel will generate that amount over 10 years. But the hotel is not on the hook to repay the debt. We are.
We're collecting the taxes from them to pay the debt that we took out.
Correct. We'll be collecting the taxes and setting them aside to repay the bonds. Yeah.
Grace, I have another question.
Yes, go ahead, Mary Alice.
So I'm not trying to belabor the point here, but in a nutshell, the central TIF doesn't have the $5.2 million in it. So we're basically taking money from the general operating fund and putting it into the TIF so that we can pay the developer the amount. But part of the repayment, right, or for us to be able to recoup the $5.2 million has to do with the extra sales tax and hotel motel tax and so forth, but also doesn't it have to do with the amount of new generated property tax?
Correct. Property tax increment is part of that.
And doesn't that increment of property tax go directly to the central TIF?
Correct. So when we're repaying the debt, so when we issue the bonds and we're repaying the debt, some of that revenue is going to be going into the general fund, like the hotel motel tax and the food and beverage tax. Some of it's going to be going into the TIF, but that money will be funneled through to a debt service fund to repay the debt.
Okay, I just was trying to make sure that we weren't mixing funds between the central TIF and the general operating in terms of how we were paying for this.
No. I mean, the loan from the general fund will be 100% repaid when we issue the debt, and those revenue streams that come from the project will be closely monitored and tracked to make sure they go to repay the debt.
Okay, all right.
James?
So just to get even more off track here, correct me if I'm wrong, but Fernie's High Horse and the Adventures in Space and Time are based on Central TIF support as well, is that correct?
Correct.
So if we didn't do this, we wouldn't have money to do those things?
Potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I believe we still need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll move resolution.
Oh, go ahead, Chandra.
I move resolution number 2025-05.035R. I don't have the full thing.
I can read the rest of the title as a resolution authorizing an interfund loan from the general operating fund to the Central Tax Increment Financing District Fund.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Chandra, seconded by James. For regular agenda, I didn't hear consent. Is that right? Okay, makes sense. Any other discussion? Yes, James.
Yeah, I will add, it's been clear to me from the beginning that we were going to bond this and pay it back with the list of things, including, I think, the boutique hotel tax that we created, particularly to augment how this development will pay back the incentive that we offered it. That was the plan from the beginning, so I am supportive of moving forward with this.
Thank you. Other discussion? Yes, I would, if possible, appreciate just some more information on the central TIF. I'm looking at the FY25 budget, a little confused on if we actually expended $7.3 million from central TIF in 2024. That maybe just an update for the next time, if we could just have a little bit of a history and current status of TIF 4 funding level.
Sure.
Thank you. Any last call discussion items? Okay, we have this item for approval going to City Council regular agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And that passes. Thank you all. And our last item of new business is ordinance number 2025-05-017, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 9, present settlement Hotel Royer incentive.
So as a budget amendment, you know, this requires 6 affirmative votes, and so it should not be placed on the consent agenda. This is probably the simplest budget amendment you've seen all year because there are only 2 items here, and one of them is the $5.2 million incentive payment for Hotel Royer, which we just discussed. Needs to be budgeted before we're able to pay that. And then the second item is an amount, is an increase of just short of $1.5 million to pay a settlement related to the final remaining property tax dispute cases. And this is related to the Presence case that involved 58 parcels that were owned by Presence as of 2015. The amount of the payment, looking for that here in my notes, is 1.498 million, roughly. And so I ask you to move this onto the agenda so that we can take care of both of those items.
Thank you. Any questions?
for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2025-05-017, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 9, present settlement hotel Royer incentive.
Second.
Moved by Jaya, seconded by Sharice for regular agenda. Any discussion? Okay, we can do a voice vote here, right? But we'll do roll call at real council. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And that passes. Thank you. Next, that concludes all of our new business. We have unfinished business and a discussion item left. Looking at the time here, I do have kind of a whole can of worms to open on a presentation on the police surveillance thing. I can condense my can of worms as quickly as possible, but I think that ultimately we will probably continue this in COW, and I imagine the comprehensive plan, up for council members here tonight to decide, but I would have us maybe consider keeping unfinished business and knock out at least the discussion item for tonight. If people wanted to hold off on opening up the whole can of worms on this next item. Yes, James?
Would you be okay with a motion to keep both of these in committee?
I
That being
am
said,
okay with that. If others,
Can I do that? Can I move to keep both of them in committee, or should I do it one at a time?
I am going to recommend that we do them one at a time,
Okay.
just because we didn't do this under additions to the agenda and they're not an omnibus, so just for cleanliness.
Thanks. I'll move that ordinance number 2024-12-042, an ordinance establishing approval, policy, and reporting requirements for the policing, surveillance technology, and databases be retained in committee until the next committee of the whole meeting.
Second.
thank you. We have moved by James, seconded by Mary Alice to keep this item in the committee of the whole. Any discussion? Yes, Jaya.
Yeah, I'm glad this is back on the agenda and look forward to discussing it at the next COW. I totally agree with not opening a can of worms at almost 10 o'clock at night, because this deserves time and attention, but also it's time to give it the time and attention. So I'll look forward to seeing this back in the next COW.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just echo that I definitely support moving this forward, absolutely plan to, but yeah, agree that we need to maybe finish out the night and maybe the budget cycle and then give this the full attention. And I do appreciate some of the continued discussions offline and continued public input. So I do feel like we'll be able to pick this up when we can. Any other discussion on this? Anything from remote members? Seeing none, we'll do a vote to keep this surveillance ordinance in committee of the whole. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And that passes. Thank you. And next we have ordinance number 2025-04013, ordinance approving the comprehensive plan. If someone was interested in a motion for that, potentially to keep that in COW also.
Yeah, I'll make that too.
Sure.
I'll move that we keep ordinance number 2025-04-013, an ordinance approving a comprehensive plan, Imagine Urbana Plan Case number 2502-CP-25, in the committee of the whole for our next meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by James, seconded by Jaya to keep that in committee of the whole. Any discussion? Would just remind folks one more time that there is the listening session here tomorrow, 6 to 8 p.m., where you can give continued feedback on that plan. And then no other discussion. All in favor on that item, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And that passes. Thank you all. And then our last item is a discussion on council rules and meeting procedures. I'm the sponsor, but I think the clerk has a good rundown and a nice memo that they've provided us with. So I don't know if you're interested in kicking us off with a presentation for this discussion.
Sure, thank you, Grace. So this item was placed on the agenda at the request of Chair Wilkin. However, this is an item that many of you have brought to my attention over the last year, and that is basically kicking off discussions, revisiting the resolution that adopts the council rules and meeting procedures. So this council adopts its own rules to govern itself within the confines of state law, of course. And the last resolution was in January of 2021, and that was via Resolution 2021-01-003R, which was the resolution provided in the packet, which is the most current version of the council rules. I did also provide a couple of bullet points of points that council has brought up for consideration, which these are just suggestions pulled purely from my memory. I am in no way making suggestions to the council on what their rules should be or what their changes should be. But briefly, I will state the considerations that I included in the memo. The first being consideration of rotating voting order, so as to remove any potential strategic advantage to voting order based solely on ward number. The second being consideration of language used to address members of the body, examples such as council member as a prefix, usage of first or last names, etc., just formalizing how you are addressed. The third provided was clarifying language regarding how a chair of committee of the whole may participate in meetings. Clarifying language stating the chair must be relinquished to make motions or enter debate, as the sharing of chair of COW is meant to be partaking in administrative duties and should not preclude you from participating as a fully voting member of the body. An additional bullet point that I will add now that I had in my notes and failed to include in the memo, I do apologize, was clarifying language regarding how items are placed on the agenda, because that has been an item that I have had numerous questions about. So just a suggestion, perhaps clarification about that process as well. Again, this is purely a discussion item, the intention being, especially given the late hour, that this will be an item that you guys continue to discuss over a series of meetings. The clerk's office is happy to take notes based off of feedback, and once a consensus on general suggestions, if any, are reached, the city clerk's office will prepare a revised version of the resolution based off of that feedback, which will come to a future committee of the whole meeting for further consideration and possible adoption. But this is your rules, not to give you homework, but this is just the kickoff. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much for starting us off with that. And again, just a discussion item, so open discussion, but I think that in the end, it would be nice to have some kind of general direction, if possible, for where to go from here. Yes, James?
As the person who has sat in Chair 7 for 4 years, I have to say that from the very beginning, I was concerned with how that impacts voting, because it means I always get to see what everybody else has done before I get to vote. And that's, I feel, an unfair advantage. And I think I've suggested this in the past. I suggest that we adopt a rotating voting sequence that would be dependent on, as Grace is the chair for the committee of the whole now, it would start with the next person and go around, so the chair votes last, which is actually a reasonable practice, I would say, for a roll call vote. And then that we would keep that same order in the city council meeting based on the report, who's the chair of the committee of the whole reporting. I think that moves it around. You never have to ask who do you start with. It's the person next to the chair for that meeting, or who's reporting out as the chair. All the other things you mentioned, I think, are great things to discuss. I don't have particular items to say about them. I would like to ask, our language about the situation with conflict of interest in voting is not really clear. I believe, I have a thing that I believe. It says you have to declare a conflict of interest, but you don't have to declare what it is, and you can pass as or not vote You have the right to not vote as a third option, essentially. I believe a conflict of interest, that's been interpreted that you don't have to say what the conflict of interest is. I think the way it reads to me, it's you don't have to justify why you feel there's a conflict of interest. I do think at any time, if you're sitting in front of the public and you say, I can't vote on this because of a conflict of interest, you don't have to justify that, but you do have to say what you believe it is. Or what is the reason why you don't feel you can vote? And so I'd like clarification on that. And I would like clarification on not voting to be a specific word that says, whether it's present or past or whatever it is we agree on, it says, I'm choosing not to vote on this topic at this time, as opposed to it being less clear.
Do you think abstain covers that currently, if I may?
I do not believe that abstentions currently cover that, because as I understand, abstentions, similar to recusal, are predominantly for explicitly stated conflict of interest. A vote of present or a refusal to vote at all, or just not saying aye or nay or abstain. I do believe there is a provision, perhaps outside of the council rules within city code, regarding voting procedures that might be from a prior version of council rules. I want to look into it, but the section that I am recalling at this moment details how votes are to be counted, so that certain times a present vote can be considered with whatever the majority vote of the council is. And I believe that only occurs in a specific circumstance, and I want to grab that language out for you guys so that we can examine it as part of this, because I think if we are going to consider such changes, we should consider that as well, like what's already written, perhaps in a different place regarding this, and revisit it in its totality.
Thank you. Other discussion, Jaya?
Yeah, thank you, Grace and Darcy, for bringing this forward. I think it's a really important conversation. I do remember James bringing this up 4 years ago, right, and in terms of the rotation. I think especially as the representative from Ward 7, that's admirable, right, like that the current situation could potentially benefit you. So I like your suggestion. I think it will make it a lot easier to track that rotation, but I do support the idea of having a rotating order for voting. Just my initial thoughts on other pieces, I do think, Darcy, the thing you brought up today, clarifying, I'll be honest, it's really helpful just to see the language from the last time this was done, because there has been so much debate about the process for putting things on the agenda. I actually don't think that there's necessarily, for me, a problem with how it's written, but then we need to make sure that that's actually abided by. For Cal, it very clearly says one council member can put things on the agenda, and that has not been consistently the feedback that council members have received. So I agree, people should do their homework, see what else stands out in terms of potentially needed changes. In terms of language to address council members, I don't mind that we're Urbana and we're a little bit less formal and use first names, but I think if we're going to use last names using, like we did tonight, trustee or council member, I've seen the clerk's office doing this, just to avoid gendered language is my preference. And then, I think making sure it's clear that the chair of the committee of the whole can still participate in meetings, and what that process looks like. I agree with that. I think that those are the big things that I've seen come up in terms of this process as well.
Thank you. And if I may, I think also with clarifying how items are added, and then also what types of items are added, and to make it clear that any sort of item, whether it be a budget amendment or an ordinance or things like that, that can be presented in the same fashion by council. I think that's what we're, a clarifying level of that point. Yes, Sharice?
You just said that, and that's something I'm going to disagree with, because I think when you have a budget item or something, it should be two council members that bring that together, not just one, mainly because it's something that's, if you're going to present something differently than that, to me, it should be you know, like if you want to give information or something like that. But when it's something that's going to affect possibly what someone's getting ready to present, maybe to the COW, I think it's just a better consensus if two people actually bring that rather than just one council member. What I was going to say before that, before this was, and I don't see it in here, and that's basically on the council input and how we are limited to 3 minutes. And even when we made this rule, I didn't like it because I think that we should have at least 5. That is what the public has, and I have yet to come across a time when we didn't have at least that much to say. Sometimes we don't, but if we don't, that's fine. But I think we should also have the same amount of time. The other thing is regarding when the mayor has something to say. Sometimes it takes more than that 3-minute thing. So I think that if a mayor, in particularly, and you know, I know you can speak for yourself, but but it was just something that I've observed over the past few years. The mayor has information to pass on to the public, and they should have the opportunity to take as long as they need to get that information passed through the public, whether it's 5 minutes, 6 minutes, because it always depends upon what the information is. But when you're trying to pass information on to the public, sometimes you got a whole list of stuff that you need to say, and you need to be able to get that out without somebody saying, "Okay, your time is up." You know, I don't think that's cool. The other thing that right now, I think that's it for now. As far as what I would want to add or amend in this particular thing.
I hear you, and I have observed the same thing, that frequently the only member of this body who sometimes has so much to share that they hit that 3-minute mark has historically been the mayor. The mayor could also and has historically provided announcements during reports of officers on council agendas. And also, the same section is named differently, but it's named staff report on committee of the whole. Obviously, the mayor is maybe not traditionally regarded as staff, but that is another avenue available at this time prior to any revisions that we may consider as well.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. James?
Yeah, I'm going to take the question about the agenda a little bit deeper, and I guess I would ask who owns the agenda? And I think there's something to be said for items considered on the agenda belonging to the mayor from a standpoint of it requires staff support for those kinds of things to come forward. And but I would say the discussion portion of the committee of the whole clearly belongs to council. So there's some ownership question there that I don't think I understand completely. I would suggest that if it's something that's owned by the mayor, if it's a portion that's owned by the mayor, I would actually prefer to see a majority of a quorum required to put something through with that, because that implies that there are enough people that are interested on council to push it forward, potentially even if the mayor didn't want it considered. And that's the question, right? Are we working well with the mayor, and is the mayor taking our requests and moving on them with staff's support, or are they not? And I would say I'm concerned because I don't think anybody has abused this at this point, but allowing any one council member to put things on the agenda means that one person has more control than I think they should have over the time that the body has. For discussion, maybe I would agree with that. For business of the council, which is the other part of the agenda, I'm not sure I agree with that.
So, if I may?
Yes.
In both state law and city code, the clerk technically owns the agenda because the clerk is the one responsible for preparing it. However, as outlined in our city code and our council rules, the procedure for how items are added to the agenda. And as I was led to believe by the prior administration, its interpretation of the agenda, the clerk also does not have the authority to place items directly on the agenda, but they are the ones responsible for preparing it, managing it, and putting it all together. That being said, I have said no to titles and formatting of things. I have also altered the order of things based off of my area of expertise in relation to the agenda. That being said, I want to ask a clarifying question, if I may. So what I have in my notes is that you were suggesting, perhaps for additions to a council agenda, not a cow agenda, that a majority of a quorum of members would put something through, which, to clarify, that would be 3 council members would be required to sponsor an item for it to be placed on the council agenda, whereas presently, 1 member has the authority to place a member exclusively on a cow, which is not final action, but 2 are required to place an item on council. So did I capture that accurately, James, that you were suggesting that it be changed from 1?
I'm just putting that out there because in my mind, it's a challenge between mayoral authority and council authority.
Gotcha.
Because my understanding is for the last 4 years, what's on the agenda has come from the mayor's office, for the most part.
Not exclusively.
We have an agenda setting meeting every Tuesday morning, unless, of course, we are having a Tuesday meeting after a Monday holiday, where the Office of City Administrator or Executive's office or the Office of the Mayor has asked the various departments what items are coming before the council. So they're kind of like the organizer and have made suggestions on the timing of items based off of like the length of agendas. Does that help clarify?
Are council members ever present at that?
No.
Has that historically been the case?
Council members are not permitted at that meeting, no.
I understand that at one point the mayor pro tem would occasionally participate with that.
That predates my experience in the
Mine
last
too,
4 years.
But that's the legend that I've heard.
You, Jay?
Yeah, I think that we should be careful about planning for any particular mayor or council. That assuming that people will play well together has not been my experience on council so far. So while I am very excited for things to be done differently, I don't want to set rules that presume that mutual respect will continue. Not saying that I expect things to change, but I think if we're talking about setting rules, and these were set before the last council, right? So this is what the last council operated under without having an opportunity to have a say. So I think it's good that we're having this conversation, but we can't talk about what might be put on an agenda with a majority of quorum. That would be a violation of the Open Meetings Act, right? So in order for us to be able to get something on an agenda to have the discussion, I actually think the rules as they stand seem appropriate, right? Like, yes, if we're talking about the city council meeting, where it's more likely that, final action might take place, making sure that there's at least some support for that makes sense. But if we're just talking about getting something on the committee of the whole agenda, to me, in some ways, I'm not just trying to suggest it's not important, but this is the space we have discussions, and I think it's going to become very clear if there's just not support in moving something forward in committee of the whole. But I think we do have a process for making it so it doesn't take up too much time and energy if it's just one person. But also, if it is one person, they still represent their ward, right? So maybe there's something that's particular to that one ward where even if we can't, as a body, agree this is something we need to move forward, still needs to get some time and attention. I think about Dr. Ellis, right? Like, how many years were you talking about that? And it took more momentum and more opportunities to actually get it beyond being viewed as a Ward 3 issue, right? But if people are never talking about it, how do we know what to move on when the opportunities come up? So I personally think, you know, in terms of representing our constituents, having the opportunity as an individual council member to say, I think this should be on the agenda for committee of the whole, because that's where we have the discussion. I think that's still important. I understand it for city council where we're trying to get through business of saying we need to have at least a second person, but I personally would keep the current structure for that and make sure that we are adhering to it consistently.
Thank you. Anyone else who hasn't chimed in for discussion yet? Remote council members?
Yeah, I have a couple of items, Grace, if I can speak.
Sure.
So one, I as the representative of Ward 1, I get the opposite end of the voting order, and I like the suggestion that James has for rotating it based on the chair. I think that's a good one. I also agree with Jaya in terms of the language used. I'd like to just admit that. I mean, generally speaking, we either call people council member or by their first name or their last name. And clarifying the language on how the chair of COW can participate makes sense to me. I actually agree with James in terms of putting something on the council agenda and having 3 people put something on the council agenda. I'd like to propose that in the committee of the whole, if it's an agenda item, it's not a discussion, so it's actually a resolution, it would make sense to have 2 people and then 1 person for discussion, if that makes sense. I know it makes it a little more complicated, but it kind of makes logical sense to me. I don't know what other people's thoughts are. And then my last thought was with the budget ordinance. I hesitate to suggest that council members can write a budget ordinance because budget ordinances always have a balance between money spent versus where the money's which line item the money's coming from. And I do understand the desire of council members wanting to propose something. So I'm wondering if the middle ground could be a vote of some kind, a straw poll or whatever, on whether or not council would like to dedicate money to a certain project, and then asking the budget office to come up with some options in terms of how we balance that.
Thank you. Chandra, did you have anything at this time?
Hi, yes. So I agree with what James said in the beginning about the rotating votes. I'd like to see that happen. I like what Mary Alice just said about 1 for discussion, 2 for a resolution, and 3 for a city council agenda item. I think that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Darcy, do you have something to add?
I'm going to make a suggestion, and like, feel free to tell me no, but as 3 is a majority of a quorum and we could run into OMA violations, perhaps adding language such that it's only 2 people that are talking at a time. So if it's like 1 person, this is their baby that they want to bring to the agenda, and it's on them to call the other 2 members and ask them to be sponsors individually, as opposed to like a group call or a group text, like just some parameters to ensure that we are not violating the intent of the OMA.
Thank you. And I've got second rounds of inputs things.
I just wanted to say that our attorney used to work at Champaign, and they require 5 council members for something to be on the agenda. So if you could speak to how that works with OMA.
Yeah, so that's for what they call a study session, which is the equivalent of a committee of the whole presentation, essentially, the preliminary discussion. The way that something would come to that directly from the council would be with 5 signatures on a document that describes the study session request, essentially. And that's how they do it. They circulate the document. That could be done, a different way, but it's essentially a one-to-one, no group discussion sort of format. So.
Clarifying question, Matt. Study sessions are not resolutions, they're not ordinances, and they're not budget amendments, correct? There's no final action ever taken at a study session.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I saw the clerk's hand up, and also looking at time, unless we're going to wrap this up in the next 6 minutes, I would welcome a motion to extend.
I think this is going to take additional conversation, so I'd rather not extend tonight.
I would appreciate if someone would. I still would like to speak, and we also have council input. I don't know if anyone's willing to go like 10:45. We don't have to do 11.
I'll move to extend the meeting until 10:45.
Any second? Okay, seeing none. Jay, would you mind taking the chair, please?
I'll take the chair. Chair recognizes Grace.
Thank you. I agree with the main kind of first presented points here. I think that limiting council's ability to add things to committee of the whole is absolutely not what I'm in agreement with. That is the meeting of the representatives, and I think it is absolutely within our right to add things there. We have had multiple items that have been initiated by a single council person or two that have ended up being really important, sometimes unanimously agreed upon items of business that have passed, and I think that any limitations to our open process and procedures is just not the right direction, in my opinion. I also think it's important to keep limitations on whoever the chair is, including the mayor. Like with council input, I think having the mayor an unlimited time while also being chair is what we've brought up as being problematic potentially. So I don't think we've really gotten a consensus. We're running out of time here, but hopefully you have some notes so that we can continue the discussion.
Would you like the chair back?
Yes, thank you. And pass to the clerk.
I was just going to suggest, based off of my notes, that I could prepare a similar memo and we could consider straw polls on some of the notes individually at the next meeting so that we have a little bit more consensus and direction towards possible edits and further discussion.
Thank you. Any last things?
I would
Yes,
just ask
James.
if we could do that as discussion at the city council meeting.
Yes, are you wanting to do that at the city council meeting on June 2nd or the next regular one, which will be the following Monday after June 2nd?
I was suggesting the things we seem to have consensus on, we could agree on it on June 2nd, but if you don't want to do it, then I'd wait for the committee of the whole.
We can find another council member and add that to the council agenda. Any other discussion on that note? Okay, next is council input and communication. Any council input? Any from our remote participants? Okay.
No, thank you.
Yes, Jaya, go ahead.
So this is actually back to the last item, sorry, but we're rushing here. I would just challenge this body to not limit our authority. This governance system already puts a lot of power in the hands of the mayor. And I think that we have a responsibility to make sure that we're creating a balance. And so any limits of individual or group council members' authority should be taken very seriously in our discussion about council rules.
Thank you. Any other last call? Okay, seeing none with no further business, we are adjourned.
That's all right. I got it.
Can I take it back?
I just want to.
Okay, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I just want to concur with Councilmember Colsetti and Wilkin that limiting or somehow making it harder for council members to put things on the agenda is the wrong direction to be going, and I don't think we should be doing that.
Thank you. Okay, now with no further business, we will adjourn.